The Social Services Department assistance provided relief to the family and reduced additional financial hardship. The Youth Empowerment Program. This young lady sent us this thank you card not too long ago, right when we were putting this presentation together, and I pulled her essay that she submitted for the scholarship program. And her father was murdered when she was young, and she was raised by a single mom. And so when I read her thank you card, it really hit home as to how successful this college scholarship program is into helping youth recognize their financial dreams and not necessarily have to graduate in financial debt from college. She says, I am one of your 2019 scholarship recipients. I would like to thank you and your organization for allowing me to focus on my educational goals rather than my financial obligations. Your help is greatly appreciated by me and my family. My mother and I are so thankful and grateful, and my father is smiling down from heaven. Education is a priority. Thanks again for your help in allowing me to follow my dreams and reach my educational goals. Kiera. So the next slide I have highlights the value that the Social Services Department brings to the county residents. So we do have a few things listed in quite a few of the categories. Under strong and sustainable local economy, we administer the self-sufficiency program to increase employment opportunities and earning potential. We administer the Youth Empowerment Program to break the cycle of poverty by providing support such as college education supports. For enhanced public safety, we coordinate emergency shelter, feeding, and recovery efforts as the county's lead for the Emergency Support Function 6, which is mass care. And that's a new role for social services. So we're currently training over 800 employees and volunteers to manage the emergency shelters. And we're also coordinating with the school district to have 50 shelters prepared for up to 50,000 evacuees should we need that. We partner with code enforcement to provide emergency housing, food, and other basic supplies to displaced victims due to a local fire or a vacate order when their home is determined uninhabitable. For life enrichment and recreational opportunities, we provide out-of-school care to youth, thereby allowing their guardians to seek or maintain education or employment. We provide free membership and program access to low-income and vulnerable residents through the YMCA partnership. And another example is we offer health, social, emotional, and physical development activities through a University Area Community Development Corporation partnership. And last, of course, but not least, is our self-sufficient individuals and families. Enable individuals to build skills and gain stable employment through tuition assistance and job training services. We help motivated individuals and families achieve financial independence by developing goal-based case plans and providing financial assistance for up to 12 months. And we prevent homelessness for residents who require stabilization and are in danger of losing their shelter or utility service. And the last slide that I have for you kind of wraps up our performance metrics and some information that I think will be meaningful to you as how it really relates to specific families and the numbers of families we serve. So for the crisis intervention program, we assisted over 9,600 families last year, and those households included over 26,000 people. The budget for that program is a little over $5 million. 64% of those households come back and see us again for multiple crises. On average, the crisis really don't cost us that much, but to them, $550 up to $1,100 means a lot. So when they walk out, they're not thinking about the same crisis that they came in with. Crises are resolved in 5 days or less, with 47% of those crises resolved the same day that they're in our office. 101 households assisted with the recovery after being a victim of a fire, and 2,400 food insecure households received fresh food and assistance. And we also coordinate additional services through partnerships with nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and other internal county departments. For the self-sufficiency programs, we assisted 457 households, and the budget for that is from our CSBG grant, which is a little over $1 million. 450 of those individuals did complete their educational goals. 84 individuals obtained employment. 87 households completed a basic financial coaching workshop, and that's in partnership with Cooperative Extension, and they were in the paper today touting their program, and that's actually our program that we partner with them for. 169 children received out-of-school care for guardians to be able to work. 46 young adults were awarded the CSBG College Scholarship this year. And we do have a 21-member tripartite board for the CSBG grant, and many of you have people appointed on that board for fiduciary oversight. And at the very bottom, I want to highlight that we do manage contracts, agreements, and in partnerships with several agencies and nonprofits, and we serve another 1,500 households annually with about another $1.6 million. So again, I want to thank you for your support. I apologize for my technical difficulties, and I hope this was informative and gave you a little bit of an overview of what we do at those community resource centers. Thank you.
Susan, thank you very much for you and what all your staff does for this county. We appreciate it very much. Ms. Overman. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
Thank you very much for the amazing work that you and your departments do. We send a lot of phone calls your way, and because we get a lot of them. But, you know, earlier today we established the Commission Against Human Trafficking, and frequently victims of human trafficking, whether it be labor and or sex trafficking, their biggest crisis and how they got there was because they had the lack of a roof over their head, or they were desperate to have one. And homeless services, as well as affordable housing, is a way of tackling that, as a way of creating that underpinning. So the work that you do is vitally important. And when we change that, we can change an awful lot in a lot of people's lives, especially our children. Those that are in the foster system are hugely at risk. And so, and a lot of parents are afraid of losing their kids because they find themselves in a situation where one emergency suddenly put them in a position of being homeless. So the work you do is amazing, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
I
I'd like
appreciate
to comment on that. We actually have a meeting with the assessment center at the end of next week to talk about having a presence, a social services presence at that assessment center, so that hopefully we can be part of the solution and not have those children removed.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
Thank you, and I just want to commend you on doing a very good job in spite of your technical difficulties in soldiering on and informing us. It was a very good presentation. Maybe without the slides, your passion and your compassion, passion for the job, compassion for the clients that you serve, really shines through, and impresses me that these people are in very good hands in your department, and I very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. Yeah, I just also wanted to add my thanks. I know I've been to many of the events, especially at the senior centers around the county, and it is just deeply impressive to see the staff and how warm and caring those centers are, and how much they mean to people that congregate there and have a place for community, to make community. So I just, again, want to thank you. And I'm actually very pleased that this year, because I noticed when we went to $15 an hour, or I guess it will be kicking in January for total, but many of the people on our social services staff were some of our lower paid employees. So I think they deserve all the compensation we could possibly make for them monetarily, but we can't possibly even do what the thank you from the community and from this board for their great work.
Thank you so much.
Continue walking on water also.
Thank you. I do want to say, I never want to be in front of a microphone, and now I can't get away. Commissioner Murmer will tell you there was a time when our customer service wasn't where it needs to be, and we're at 98%. So you're right, we have a great staff, and they love what they do, and I'm very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have them.
I can tell you about Lee Davis.
That's right. You can tell me about
Oh,
the
yeah.
Lions after on the door.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way, and unfortunately, these people are living in some dire situations. One child in their home outgrowing their tennis shoes and needed buying a new pair of shoes can really make the I in their budget.
I'm sorry.
So.
Hold on, Commissioner Merman wants to talk.
I
Well,
wasn't
I
trying to call on
guess
you,
save the best
Commissioner.
for last. No, I mean, I can't. I want to say she's one of my faves in this place because when she first came here, I mean, we stole her from the sheriff's department.
You did.
Yes, we did, and I just remember that so well. Carl, if Carl's still here, he probably remembers. But no, you've really dug in, and you know how to help people, and I know you care so much, but it's knowing how to help. And that's really important around here because as far as customer service is concerned and things like that, so that people don't linger on. You get them help, send them on their way, and they can hopefully be self-sufficient at some point. But you've always done a great job.
Thank you so
And
much.
I have a lot of faves around here. Everybody's my favorite, but you really do shine
Thank you so much.
quite a bit.
And thank
Thanks.
you again for your time today.
Thank you. Mr. Crosby Rucker.
I can't see.
If it doesn't work, don't worry about it. You can swing it.
Okay, yes, sir, absolutely. Good afternoon. Felicia Crosby Rucker, Homeless Services Director. Yes. Good afternoon, Felicia Crosby Rucker, excuse my raspiness, Homeless Services Director. This afternoon, just want to talk to you briefly about how Homeless Services Department contributes to community prosperity. One life event can change the path for any person from self-sufficiency to homelessness. Today, the face of homelessness is just not the person that is pushing the cart down the street filled with their life possessions. It could be any single person or man that's here in plain sight, that's dressed just like any ordinary person or looks like someone that's on this slide above us. In February 2019, the annual point-in-time count for our community was completed, and it revealed about 1,600 people were experiencing homelessness here in Hillsborough County. About 60% of those persons that are experiencing homelessness at that time were in shelters in our community. And the sidebar is the county provides funding for 5 shelters that support persons experiencing homelessness. What we've determined, or what we learned from that data, is that some of the leading causes of homelessness is financial hardship, people losing their jobs, car repairs, a major life event, something happens in their life and it's just them in a downward spiral. Medical and disability issues. People have mental health issues or challenges with disability. They can't get a job, they can't get approved for disability, or having challenges getting approved for disability, and that creates a hardship for them as well. Another challenge is housing. And we've talked about that, and people have talked about that today. Housing challenges, accessing affordable housing in the community, either not being able to afford the housing, or they having barriers in their background, or they have evictions, or they have convictions, or things that affect them from getting access into housing. Probably one of the highest number of calls that we get for our office in particular is the family relationship breakdowns. We get a lot of calls on a monthly basis, and it's coupled with financial hardship, medical disability issues, housing challenges, just the family dynamics breakdown. When you lose your income, when someone gets sick, or there's a death in the family, or there's mental health or some kind of physical issue, medical issue that's going on, the family dynamics change, families break up, people end up on the streets or end up in places that are not meant for human habitation. So one of the top questions people ask is, how do you access services? How do you get into them? How do you access services and get into the system to become self-sufficient when you're experiencing homelessness? We have community outreach teams out there with Tampa Police Department, Hillsborough County Sheriff Office. We actually partner with Metropolitan Ministries. We have a mobile brigade that the county provides funding to. They're out in the community, and they're actually targeting that 40%, people that are out there in the streets, they're in the shelters, in encampments, or in places that are not meant for human habitation. And what they do is engage people. And what we've learned is, over the last 5 years since our department has been established, we've been working with consultants, we've been working with Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative, and also, too, we've worked with the national expert, Mr. Philip Magano, and we realized that everybody doesn't want to go into shelter. And so shelter is not the only pathway to permanent housing and to access supportive services. That's why these outreach teams are so important. What we do is empower those outreach teams with resources and relationships so they can access financial assistance, as well as housing stability resources and support services. So people on the streets can be met where they are, get assistance, and go from the streets directly into permanent housing. What does it look like if you go to a shelter? You can go to a community outreach team or any of our community service providers and go to a shelter. We have several shelters in our community. The ones that the county provides funding to are Metropolitan Ministries, the Salvation Army, ACTS, the Agency for Community Treatment Services, as well as the DACO Community Housing Solutions Center. And then we have one shelter that we fund beds in South County, Mary and Martha House. There are other shelters in the system, but the 5 I named above are the ones that we actually, the county, our department manages contracts, and we partner with them. And with those 5 agencies, among those 5 agencies, those beds represent a little bit over a third, almost half of the beds in the entire shelter system. So what do you get when you go to a shelter? You get access to case management, you get temporary housing, a bed, a place to stay, you get access to food, clothing, you get access to health care. People are there. We partner with Hillsborough County Healthcare Services, and we have outreach teams that go to all of the shelters monthly to sign people up for the Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan. Also, too, we partner with the Sunshine Line, and people are able to apply for assistance for bus passes as well while they're at the shelter. All that, the resources are coming to the clients at the shelter. The clients do not have to go out or leave the shelter to access these services. Also, too, one of the biggest game changers has been the SOAR, and this is basically an expedited process for people to get access to the disability assistance. Gene Early with Healthcare Services, he funds this initiative, and I believe there are 6 SOAR specialists out in the community, and they also are present in all of our shelters in the community. So if someone is on the Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan and they're trying to get their disability, they don't have to go out and seek legal assistance or pay for an attorney to do that. They can go through our trained, certified SOAR staff and access that, and now they have income. And that SOAR team has been recognized nationally because they've been able to actually get people approved in less than 90 days, which is definitely unheard of and exceeds the national response. Also, people can get access to career source and job opportunities while they're at the shelter. They get referrals, they go to job fairs, they help them with life skills and prepare them for employment as well. Then you get directed to housing, financial assistance, housing search assistance, and then that wraparound support services. So people can go into shelter and access those same resources and get into permanent housing, or they can be met where they are, and the outreach teams can work with them and then get them into housing. What does success look like for us? For our department, basically the only direct service that we provide is going to be the system navigation or the complex customer service calls that we get from a lot of commissioner offices, from state and federal officials. But success can look a number of ways for us. When we reunify someone with their family, that's success for us. When we have someone come here to our office that's experiencing homelessness, and we have access to our homeless management system, which is a database that we track where persons are receiving services, and we're able to link them with their case manager or link them with a case manager and a service agency, that's success for us. Recently, actually I got a call yesterday that a veteran that had showed up in our office a couple of weeks ago, we went and did some checking in the system and realized that he was someone that Tampa Crossroads was looking for. He was a veteran. They had been looking for him, showed up at our office seeking help. We linked him with the case manager, outreach person with Tampa Crossroads, and I got a call yesterday that now they're on the path towards getting him into permanent housing. So that's success for us. Success can come in many ways. One case I want to highlight is going to be Miss Barbara. Barbara's 58 years old. She's a disabled woman. She really didn't have any income, very little work experience. For most of her life, she's been taking care of her mother, and she couldn't do anything else. Her mother was the owner of the home. Eventually, as her mother as her mother health deteriorated, her mother was placed in a nursing home. What happened was that Barbara had no housing, no family support, no work experiences, and no resources. And Barbara had nowhere to go. Barbara, at 58 years old and disabled, ended up being homeless. What we were able to do was to link her with one of our community emergency bridge housing shelters through one of our partners. At the shelter, Ms. Barbara entered, received a case manager. They came up with a case plan. Each person that goes into the shelter, each household that goes into the shelter, their case plan is set up and is unique to that person in their situation. She was set up, and she was set up with insurance through Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan. The agency was able to secure donated equipment to help with her mobility, as well as getting bus passes to assist with transportation to move around to appointments in the community. Also, too, she was able to take advantage of the SOAR specialist and get her disability approved. Also, in working with the shelter, case manager at the shelter, she was able to access housing, and now Ms. Barber is now living independently on her own in affordable, safe housing in our community. That's what success looks like to us. So what value does homeless services bring to community? Well, under enhanced public safety, we provide over 272 units of shelter, which includes case management and the supportive services that I've talked about. Those 272 units actually equates to about 420 beds in our community. Some of our shelters have beds, some of our shelters have rooms with multiple beds, some of our shelters have dormitory units with multiple beds, as well as some of our shelters, just their rooms, units, and then their apartments that are in the community. Also, we enhance public safety where we partner with law enforcement to provide community outreach and engagement. When we're getting a call about persons experiencing homelessness in a particular area, we're reaching out to law enforcement, and they're working, law enforcement liaisons are working with us on assessing the clients and linking them up to shelter or linking them up in the path to permanent housing. Also, too, another way we do enhance public safety is we partner with local groups to provide temporary shelter during cold weather nights. The Cold Weather Shelter Initiative is a community-led initiative that started over 20 years ago. This is all grassroots level. This is community and faith-based groups that have come together, open up their doors of their churches or their community agencies, and it's strictly volunteers, and the county comes in and offers support to help the agencies in doing that. Last season, from January to March of last year, we had 10 cold weather shelter nights, and that's when the temperature hits 40 degrees, including wind chill. We had 10 cold weather shelter nights. We provided shelter, the community provided shelter for 135 persons for each night and about 13 pets. Also, what we do is life enrichment and recreational opportunities. We partner with social services and the YMCA to provide 30 memberships annually and summer camp vouchers to families that were homeless. What we do is our family shelter is Metropolitan Ministries that we provide funding to, and we have a staff person that works closely with their case managers on families that are exiting the Metropolitan Ministries shelter, and what we do is match up and screen them for assistance to get the YMCA vouchers. This creates an opportunity for families to get engaged in the community, take advantage of the summer camps and other services that the Y has. So that partnership with social services has really been good, and our families have really embraced that, and we appreciate the support. Also, the self-sufficient and individual families, what we do also under there is coordinate and leverage internal resources for special initiatives. And some of these special initiatives that we do are the complex customer service cases. And those are some of the cases that we hear from commissioner offices, from Congresswoman Castor's office, or local representatives. And these are cases that require a little bit more time. It's not just a referral to a different agency. It's assessment, always try and defer people and try and get them to go do diversion and to go back home. But if not, what we do is coordinate efforts with multiple agencies. Recently, we worked with the commissioner's office on a family of 8, mom, dad, and 6 kids, who were refusing shelter, but they wanted to be housed. And that required a lot of time, a lot of staff time, coordinating with multiple agencies, coordinating with Sunshine Line, because a family of 8 with no transportation, how do you move someone around? How do you move a family of 8 around on a public bus? It's a challenge in itself. We work closely with Sunshine Line, we work closely with Feeding Tampa Bay, and also to the volunteers in the community who reached out, who were doing the best they could before it was brought to our attention to try and help navigate the situation. Unfortunately, the family elected to move on, and we respect their wishes and their decisions, and we assisted them in partnership with Metropolitan Ministry and the community, and they relocated to Arkansas. Also, too, we do some special initiatives like community response projects. I'm sure you've heard about the Friendship Palms project, where the 30 residents had to relocate because the building was being sold. What we did is we led an effort and established a community response team. And what we had to do was go in less than 30 days, assess 30 people who had mental, physical disabilities, and relocate them, help them relocate to other properties in our community. Also, too, we worked closely with Plant City with a rooming house issue where we had no time to prepare, where there were 20 people, 20 adults and 1 child that we had to relocate within a couple of hours because the rooming house was being closed down. So we really work together with our community. We step up when people ask and the community needs our help. We do a lot of coordinating, bringing partners together to make sure that people are getting into safe places, and also to trying to get people into permanent housing. Another thing that we're proud of is our high quality community assets. And we support about 100 units. It's about 5 Housing First projects in our community. This is a game changer. We work with Steps Forward, Housing First, and they have about 5 projects in the community right now. And Housing First is the approach that our community has adopted, and we embrace that, and we appreciate that support. Also, too, we have the set-aside units. I believe Cheryl talked about that earlier under affordable housing, that in partnership with THHI, when Cheryl brings on new units online, there's a set-aside about 10% of the units specifically for persons emerging from homelessness. And we appreciate that partnership. And I think that's a unique partnership. We have not seen anyone stepping up doing that, at least in the state of Florida. Also, too, we complete in partnership with code enforcement, they complete over 100 inspections annually for all of the shelters, all 5 shelters that the county funds, as well as the apartments. For HUD funds or federal or state funds that fund shelters, typically they require just an annual inspection of the shelters. Here, we made a conscious decision that we wanted to be more on top of our shelters to make sure that shelters were safe places for people to be staying in. And each one of our shelters, they're inspected monthly by code enforcement. And our 20 apartments that we have in the community, they're inspected as they turn over. So code is doing about 100 inspections for us annually. So what I want to take a look at is not sure if you can see that. Take a look at the population growth in relationship to our homeless population. This slide shows that over the last 5 years, of course, our population has grown between about 35,000 per year, and I got the data from the Planning Commission. Between 2018 and 19, it's a larger increase, about 2.5% growth. But we're seeing about 30,000 new residents overall in the county every year. Our homeless population makes up less than 1% of that, 1% of the total population. What we've seen is a downward trend that at our highest point in 2015, the homeless population made up 0.15% of the total population, and now at 2019, based on the total population, our homeless data is about 0.11% of 1% of the total population of persons experiencing homelessness. As I wrap up, I want to kind of share with you some of our key performance metrics in several areas. And what we know for sure is that for our county-funded projects, our 5 shelters and contracts that we manage, 69% of persons in one of our contracted beds are there for less than 90 days. The difference can be attributed to barriers to accessing housing, client interest in securing housing, as well as being able to secure funds for an affordable income for affordable living. 92% of persons that exit the county contracted beds, they're going to places that are other than homelessness. 43% of that 92% are going into permanent housing. This is great, and we all see that people are moving into permanent housing, families are being reunited, or people are being placed in other places, assisted living facilities or other nursing home type facilities. What we know today is that homelessness is a complex issue that requires coordination, partnerships, and leveraging of resources at all levels. Despite the progress that we've made, there's still much more work for us to do to ensure that our county has a safe and stable home for everyone. While the causes of homelessness are complex, we are taking advantage of every opportunity out here to mitigate the causes by working with affordable housing as they increase affordable housing in our community, with Sunshine Line as we increase access to transportation, as well as working with healthcare services to ensure that our most vulnerable population have access to health care. Overall, our value in our work is to infuse all of these existing resources to the system of service to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Thank you. That's it.
Mr. Crosby-Rucker, let me again thank you for all that you do. My office was referred, I know, a lot of people to you. We did last week.
Yes. Yes, sir.
That was a tough one, and you're still working on it.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate that. So we appreciate everything that you and your office is doing for us in Hillsborough County. Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
I think we just need to call you the Angels Department, because I referred the family of 8 to you after our community was doing everything could to put a roof over this family that was in crisis situation. And you and your department just, every day that I have an opportunity to give you more work, which happens, you just outperform what anybody would actually expect. So I just want to thank you for what you do, what you're able to do in order to bring a family in crisis, which I'd love to get the stats on this, because people's perception of homelessness is the assumption that these are not working people, when in reality, I believe it would be helpful for people to recognize these are working families that have found themselves falling on hard time.
Correct.
They aren't folks that are sitting on a couch one day and discover somebody stole their couch. You know, these are working families and mothers and fathers that are taking care of their children and trying to. And when we create that bridge, we help a community stay safer, healthier, and the well-being of the society as a whole. So I'm just going to start calling you the Angels Department, because you're doing a great job, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, too. And I work with 7 ladies. I don't do it alone. There's 7 ladies that I work with. It's definitely a team effort. And we rely on social services, affordable housing, THHI, and all of the other departments, too, to help us make this happen.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill.
I'll just,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm
I was
sorry,
in the
Mr.
queue.
Commissioner Merman.
I thought you said Merman. Felicia, you're great. That's it. I mean, you're fabulous.
Great job today, Audrey, Felicia, Cheryl. And I think all the scorecard presentations have really been spectacular. I appreciate the board being willing to include this on their agenda. Directors thought I was punishing them when I said you're going to present to the board and show people the value and you're going to talk about success stories, but I think they're starting to understand this is a good thing. It allows them to tell their story and to really show that, you know, we're giving good value to residents. So I appreciate your willingness to hear it. And that concludes our regular items. We just have 2 items removed from consent for discussion. A2 was removed by Commissioner Overman.
Mr. Overman, you're recognized.
Excellent, thank you. This past Monday, we actually had our first reorganized Affordable Housing Board meeting of the newly reorganized board. And in an effort to bring back to this board the biennial plan that is required, we brought it to the first item on our agenda, besides addressing a few other items, but we quickly got to work. We had a very lively discussion, and I'm excited to work with this team, because everyone was very fully involved in the issue, and we will work to tackle the affordable housing crisis here in our community. AHAB had a number of actions that were taken that I'd like to bring to the board's attention. First, we decided to meet monthly on the second Monday of each month at 9 a.m. One that'll allow our meetings not to be like 6 hours long, because we have 6 hours worth of work to do, but it'll also allow us to be more timely on issues that come up in front of the board for recommendation. Second, we have formed a subcommittee that has been tasked with reviewing our bylaws that are in need of being updated due to the reorganization and resolution, as well as due to the HOPE Affordable Housing Act. So we'll need to update our bylaws to reflect those additions to our toolbox. Lastly, the reason I pulled this item for discussion is the board had a very robust conversation on the biennial plan, of which I think we heard some public comment about it this morning, and made the recommendation to move the allocation of funding from moderate income category to very low income, which would increase the allocation for very low income from 30% to 40% and decrease the moderate income allocation to 0. The whole point of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board reorganization was to explore best practices on an equitable basis to increase access to affordable housing, i.e. additional housing units. Although I have confirmed with the county attorney that this recommendation is not inconsistent with the HOPE Affordable Housing Act, I am concerned that the economic and practical impact of this recommendation has not been vetted sufficiently by our staff, as the recommendation was only made 2 days ago. Frankly, my hope is for this plan is to increase the number of housing units through effective policies and strategies. And while I am appreciative of the plan and it doesn't violate the code, I think it would be wise to take a moment, take a pause. Since the BOCC has until March of 2020 to approve this biennial plan, I would urge caution by this board to allow staff to better analyze the Affordable Housing Advisory Board's recommendation. And thus we move to reschedule the public hearing while sticking to the March deadline to allow staff more time to analyze the effects of the recommendations of the biennial plan. Yes.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to ask, what did we vote on before? I'm asking the county attorney. Cheryl Howe made a presentation to
Yes.
us.
I think the motion there, and Nancy can correct me, but it was to receive the report.
Well, which is, I mean, isn't that an acceptance?
Well, the ordinance requires the advisory board and the public hearing. So you
Right.
really need to have a public hearing and the advisory board before you can approve the plan finally.
I see. Okay.
And this opens, I'm sorry, to address your issue. It opens the public comment period. It gives us the ability to move forward on it and to receive the plan as required by the ordinance. But we're not, I think that before the BOCC says, oh, yep, looks good, let's go there, we need to understand the impact of the recommendation so that it's fairly vetted by the staff.
Well, I think, and I'm going to make this statement again, that they are, in essence, an advisory board still, an advisory board. And this board makes the final decision. And they need to understand that, because what I know of the members of that board, obviously, they all want things for themselves. I mean, you know, that's how this whole process works, and I get that. But I will tell you, if we go to zero on the, I think it's the 80%, is it the 80%? 100%, we are shutting the door to police, firefighters, nurses, and teachers. And I can't in good conscience do that. So if the public hearing starts now, that's my comments. I think those are very, very important, and these people have moved to South County. You could drive down any street and see 3, 4, 5 Hillsborough County deputy cars parked in the driveways. They're living in houses where they can afford. And, but until they get to that point, when they first get hired, and if you know what their salaries are, and you know what teacher salaries are, it's awful. You know, we've got to really keep that in mind and not completely shut the door to those people. Thank you.
Your motion was for this staff to vet this, am I correct? Because I have the concerns Commissioner Merman has. You just can't drop the bomb on people that are looking for workforce housing. And this eliminates it, basically. And this board is responsible of carrying out what we think was put forth by this whole HOPE Housing Fund. And the committee has to realize that we do have the final say-so on this. But you did ask, I think, in your motion that your recommendations be vetted by the staff, am I correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. But be ever mindful that whatever staff brings back, this board has to say so. And I have a major concern with
Yeah.
what their recommendation is.
Let me make it very clear here. One, we had a deadline based on your request to come back in at this time period, with a recommendation on the draft, so that we could open the door for commentary. I'm not suggesting that door has closed, but the original motion was to establish a public hearing on December 18th. Given that the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, who wants to come up with good recommendations for this board's approval, there was not, given our first meeting 2 days ago, time to do the appropriate vetting, but we were attempting to meet the schedule. The good news is the ordinance allows for us to make sure we address the biennial requirement to be adopted by March, so there is some time. I wanted to share with you what the board wants to explore. I also thought, to be prudent, we should have an opportunity for the board to consider its recommendation. And there's literally just not enough time to do that. But I also didn't want to leave it out there and miss a deadline that you had asked for. So it is my recommendation that we hear what they mentioned, what they suggested as a policy, but also ask staff to come back and help us understand the impact of that recommendation before we have a public hearing to say yay or nay. Because while I don't want the plan rejected at this point, I think there's an opportunity for us to get where we want to go in terms of an effective, workable, affordable housing strategy over a 2-year plan. So.
We have a motion by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Smith. See no further discussion? I'm sorry. Commissioner Kemp, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. It just sounds to me like we're just having more time. It doesn't hold up any investment that we make. It doesn't hold up, doesn't do anything like that. It also isn't either an affirmation of what the committee decided. Now, I don't think is the time necessarily to debate it. I'd like to definitely hear what the staff, hear what the committee, have time to do this. If it were holding up our investment, I might be a little more reticent about this, but I definitely want to postpone and, or I support the motion because I want an opportunity to do the most vetting possible within the timeline.
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
There is a lot of public interest in this issue and a lot of enthusiasm about our first ever HOPE Affordable Housing Trust Fund, also an acknowledgement in the community awareness that this is a crisis situation. And so I was kind of concerned about the timeline between, today and your new board and this setting the hearing for our very next meeting before Christmas. I would very much like to have more time since we've got plenty of time. So let's afford the public more time to look over this and weigh in. I myself was hoping that with our first 2-year plan, we could get to 50% for that low 50%. So just for the first 2-year plan to address the neediest. So I'm very interested in looking over the AHAB's recommendation, and I do appreciate your steering through the rocky shoals of political pressures and citizen input on all sides of that, and appreciate you putting that board together to work with. So let's let that breathe and have some work, and I think it's a great idea to bring it to hear back from staff before we choose A or B, and see if there's any further adjustment or anything else that needs to be done. Thank you.
We have a motion by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Smith. See no further discussion, please record your vote.
Commissioner Warren. Motion carried, 5-0.
Mr. Merrill.
Excuse me, sorry.
Okay, and the last item removed from consent for discussion is A14, removed by Commissioner Kemp.
Mr. Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. I removed, A14 to do with the calendar, and I'm going to go at it one more time. I had raised this issue at the beginning of the year, but I think that I want to raise it again for discussion. Last year, during what is recognized as the lame duck land use session, and it occurs after the elections but before the investiture. It's a very short period. We do it very quickly here. But on the agenda last year, two of the most controversial land use items we had last year were placed on the land use meeting after the election but before the investiture of the newly elected commissioners. And despite the pleas, we had the longest land use meeting I had ever had in my 2 years here by a long time. We had lots of residents. We had lots of concern. Despite the pleas of numerous residents, the items that were there that were extremely controversial were approved by relying on the votes of outgoing commissioners. I think it made a bad impression on the public. I don't think it's good public policy. And it was criticized in the newspaper, and I'll pass that out to you. This was the headline from the editorial was Hillsborough Commissioner's Parting Gift for Phosphate at the time. I know that Commissioner Miller, you couldn't be present at that meeting, I believe. And I don't think that we should allow that to be happening again, should it? I just don't think the opportunity should be there. It's just bad public policy in my mind. So I'm going to move that only items so that we can move a lot through. We don't have to necessarily not have things happen because most of what we do is on consent anyway or is passed with consent. There's not a lot of items that become controversial. So I move that only items with unanimous consent may be heard on the November 10th land use agenda and that all other matters should be continued to December.
Ms. Ferris, come here a minute, please, ma'am. When the elections occur in November of 2020, when does those of us that are leaving after those elections, when are we no longer members of this county commission?
The Hillsborough County Charter provides that the newly elected commissioners, whether they're incumbent elected or new to the board, will take office the second Tuesday after the Tuesday that they were elected.
Okay.
In this case, it was the November 3rd is the election day. They would be sworn in on the 17th, so you would serve, for instance, and Commissioner Merman until November 16th.
November 16th, midnight?
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So therefore, Commissioner Kemp, you're saying that the two of us that are here should shirk our responsibilities as county commissioners because of the mere fact you call us quote-unquote lame duck? I think that is absolutely wrong. I'm not going to sit here and shirk my responsibility as a county commissioner because the mere fact is that the elections are held in November and my responsibility ends at midnight on the 16th. So I should have every opportunity as a county commissioner to do what I'm supposed to do. And I don't think the public would appreciate the mere fact is that I'm sitting here, not sitting here on after the elections and drawing a paycheck and not doing what I'm supposed to do. I think that is absolutely absurd to let that even happen or even talk about that. So therefore, I'm asking you, please, please do not support this because the mere fact is that as elected officials, you all are going to get there one day, maybe sooner than you think, but you all are going to get there one day, that after those elections, you're still going to be a county commissioner and you're still going to have responsibilities of the public. You still have to carry forth your responsibilities of what you're supposed to do. And by the way, not only does our charter tell us what to do, your responsibility and your job is outlined in the statutes of the state of Florida. Outline the statute of the state of Florida. And it tells you when you're not supposed to be doing that. Any longer, that's when you're not in office. And our office serves, you serve in office until the second Monday at midnight after a November election. So I'm asking you, please do not support this because what you're doing is telling the public those of us that are leaving office after this election should not be doing what we're supposed to do. And by the way, still pay them. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
I agree with both of you, to tell you the truth, because I do believe, when we swear to do the job, we do the job. I also think that human nature is fascinating, and things occur when we give people an opportunity to find an advantage. And having a land use meeting that sets something in motion that we have to live with possibly for decades and decades and decades beyond someone's oath of service, offers an opportunity for abuse. And I think it can be easily avoided if we move the last land use meeting to the Tuesday before an election. For example, in the 2020 calendar, there is a Tuesday available. There's actually 2 Tuesdays available for land use meetings. You still have a person who is duly elected and sworn to office making a decision. And you have, you don't have an opportunity for someone who said, I voted for this person who's now in office, and they don't have a say in what's being adopted because they haven't been sworn in yet. So while I don't disagree with you, yes, every one of us that are elected are required to carry the oath of office that we carry. But by eliminating the challenge, by having the last land use meeting that sets in stone something for a very long period of time. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, it's already been approved, you can't do anything about it. Sorry, you're going to get sued. Sorry, that's the way it is. Those are very uncomfortable places for someone who's been sworn to serve our public in its best interest. So to avoid that kind of confusion, I'd like to amend your motion to suggest that that the last land use meeting be the Tuesday prior to an election. It's not to say to take away a meeting. It's to offer an opportunity to schedule it prior to an election day, if that's an option. That way, I mean, there's opportunity for 2 land use meetings in October. October's a 31-day month, unless it's really weird. We have control over what we put on our agendas for those time periods. And if it doesn't put a commissioner in a difficult position, I don't see the harm in actually adjusting our schedule to accommodate that opportunity, to allow not only those serving to do the best job they can, but also to allow voters to say, the first time someone that they've elected gets a chance to address this issue, they have an opportunity to do so.
We have an amendment by Commissioner Overman. Is there a second? Is there a second? Dies for lack of a second.
I will.
Dies for lack of a second. Dies for lack of a second.
I will withdraw my motion to make a new motion.
Commissioner Kemp withdraws.
And my motion will be that we set the land use meeting on the last Tuesday in October. And I think that that's I support that concept since others feel, it is not meant to be personal. I just think it is bad public policy in terms of how we move forward. And you were absolutely correct in identifying the land use. We do have a BOCC meeting in that time. And I think that the BOCC meeting is, perfectly legitimate to have in that time to move forward on it with all the items and agenda items. But the problem with land use is, you're right, it's permanent forever. You cannot reverse it. It is irreversible. It is, I think we should be doing it in the final Thursday. So I'll make or Tuesday. I'll make the motion to do the meeting in the final Tuesday before the election.
A motion by Commissioner Kemp. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Kemp, you recognize again.
I've
Commissioner Smith,
said
you
my
recognize.
piece.
Yes, and I understand very well what you're saying, and I feel you. The responsibility for being a county commissioner. I lived through that last land use agenda, and it was just record-breaking huge, and the impression for the public is that things were put there because there's a lack of accountability. Things that if they had been before the election would have been matters for discussion by those candidates that were still running. The commissioners that were here that were running for office, those issues would have been topics of discussion in the debates by their challengers, by them. They would have to be then answering to the voters in that election. And instead of that, the matters were put on the one land use hearing of the year that they are not accountable, that those commissioners are no longer accountable to the voters. And the permanency, whatever is decided in the county commission meetings, it has a possibility of the new board coming in and rescinding. In fact, we did that. But land use, no, it's done. And I think the motion that you crafted I supported it at the end of last year because of these same issues, said the same things, but the one you brought forward of, well, let's just have a consent agenda, that was a way of getting at it, but another way is what you've suggested. So I think this helps the public feel that these land use issues, particularly when these are often matters involving special interests that are very involved in campaigns. It is, and there is, at the very least, that perception that some of these decisions involve these special interests that are involved in campaigns. And so I think it would be just good government to have our last land use hearing pushed up a couple weeks in October, and everybody can vote on it just the same as they could the next a week or two later after the election.
Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
So that's the exact point. What's the difference of 2 weeks? Because you're saying a political decision is going to be made if it's 2 weeks later? Is that what I'm hearing? Because I find it disrespectful to Commissioner Miller and myself that we're even having this discussion. Because you guys, if you really don't want to vote on something, then move to defer it, or try and get action on the board to take something off the agenda to the next land use meeting in December. But to change our calendar because we're concerned a political decision after an election is going to be made, I mean, that it's absurd. I'm making a substitute motion to defer this item till we have a full board present to discuss this among all 7 members, because this involves all 7 of us, not 5. And I'm making a substitute motion.
Commissioner Merman made a substitute motion. Is there a second? I'll pass it. Y'all, I'll second it.
I think it was clear that this is what the issue was, and the commissioners decided or chose not to be here for this discussion. So I'm fine with carrying this out now.
Okay. Did you have commentary, Commissioner Merman? Okay, so the amendment,
No, we're voting on the substitute
or
motion.
substitute amendment, motion rather, sorry, I'll get better at this. Substitute motion is do you want to restate your motion, please?
Defer this item
Until we have a full board. So in other words, make sure it's on a time certain so that it doesn't end up at the end of the day.
Right.
Please record your vote.
Motion carried, 3-2. Commissioners Kemp and Smith voted no.
Okay, so that particular issue is deferred, but we're still on the A14. I want to bring something forward concerning January. We have Hillsborough Day on the 14th, the 15th of January. And I know some members would like to go up on that Tuesday before Hillsborough Day. And we have a land use meeting scheduled on that Tuesday before the 15th. So in speaking with Mr. Merrill, there are a couple of things we can do. One is to move it to the 13th of January, or move it to the 21st, which is a week later of January, or to the 27th of January. The 20th, Mr. Merrill's concern with the 21st is that also that week we have a county commission meeting, and feel that those two big meetings that week could be problematic with briefings and things along those lines. But I do know that some of us would like to be in Tallahassee on the 14th. So we need to decide if we're going to do this, or we're going to leave the land use meeting on the 14th of January, or move it to one of the days that Mr. Merrill has recommended, either 13th, 21st, or 27th. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
Actually, I was going to bring this item up as well, because I would like to be there for opening day, and had planned on going up for Hillsborough Day. My only concern about the 13th, it'll be my next Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting.
Okay.
On the 13th is our next actual meeting at 9 a.m. I do recognize that having it the day after a holiday is a challenge, but I would be fine with moving it to the 21st.
Well, let me ask this question. Do any of you have issues with having a land use meeting and then 2 days later having a county commission meeting in the same week?
I have 5 board meetings in the first week of the month. I'm used to that.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Merman?
Yeah, I have Port Board on the 21st. Can we do, like on the 13th, could we do a 1 o'clock land use meeting and not have it be at 9?
Some people want to leave that day headed to Tallahassee, so they can be there to Tallahassee that morning.
Oh, before the 14th?
Yes. So
Yeah,
the only other day we have is the 27th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there any,
We have that Park Operations and Safety Committee.
Did you put me on?
you asked for it. I put you, you asked for it and you got it.
Monday at 9 a.m. the 27th.
Well, in that case, we're going to have to leave our land use meeting on the 14th. And, well, if you want to go to Tallahassee and miss your land use meeting, that's entirely up to you. But that's, looks like we're going to leave it on the we're going to have to leave it on the 14th. Okay. The 13th at what? I said that because the mere fact is that I know that on the 14th, there was some talk of some of us wanting to be there that morning on the 14th for the opening of the session, which means if we run late on that Monday, a lot of us won't be able to get there, or if we travel late at night, and some of us are too old to be driving at night.
So what time's your meeting?
9.
Well, how about 11? 11 o'clock.
It's here in the building, so it's over here across the street.
Is there,
We could just be late.
is there an objection to having a land use meeting on Monday the 13th at 11? That means you're going to work through lunch. I don't know if staff wants you eating while you're here because they might have to clean up, but, you know. Is there an objection to meeting on the 13th of January at 11? Is that what we're going to do? Okay. Without objection, we'll meet on the 13th. Land use meeting will be held on the 13th of, you want to hear this? On the 13th of January at 11 a.m. Okay. All right. So now we're back on the adoption of the calendar. Is there a motion to adopt the calendar? There's a motion by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Merman to adopt the 2020 calendar. See no further discussion, please record your vote.
I have a question, point of order. I just want to know, in adoption of the calendar, so we're not adopting that land use day, we're waiting until,
Oh, okay.
okay. Okay, thank you.
So you're adopting the calendar except for that
Yes.
one, okay. Right.
Motion carried 5-0.
Mr. Merrill,
Okay. That just leaves future discussion items.
any future discussion items? Future discussion items? Any? Mr. Overman, you recognize.
I'd like to ask the staff to come back at the next board meeting with a workshop scheduled to address the policy issues that we need to address when it comes to mobility fees, land use, impact fees, and water infrastructure fees. I know we have one mobility fee workshop scheduled for December. Right, and then, but there were several outstanding workshop-related presentations that we've either looked to have or have had, where we haven't addressed what our decisions are in those directions. I'd like to see us, now that we have a 220 calendar, and we know what that looks like, and we have outlined, at least tentatively, hold spaces for workshops. I'd like the staff to bring back to us at the next board meeting a plan for the outstanding policy conversations and workshops for the next 3 months, and with identification of in what order we're going to address those issues. It does two things, in my opinion. It gives staff deadlines to be able to hit. Two, and it gives us the ability to really vet or bring to the table the professionals we think we need to hear in order to help us in designing effective policy going forward.
Any other future items? Seeing none, we'll adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay.